The air conditioning in the penthouse hummed with a quiet, expensive efficiency, keeping the humid Lagos heat at bay. From the floor-to-ceiling windows of her master bedroom, Madame Florence looked down at the dark, oil-slicked water of the lagoon. At 85, she was a woman composed of sharp angles and even sharper eyes. To the business world, she was the Iron Lady of Lekki real estate, a silent partner in 3 major oil firms, and a woman who could level a skyscraper with a single phone call. But to her son, Godwin, she was simply Mama, a frail, retired schoolteacher he insisted on protecting from the harsh realities of his wealth. Godwin was a good man, perhaps too good for a city like Lagos. He sat in the dining room below, his voice drifting up the marble staircase as he closed yet another multi-million-dollar deal. He was 42, handsome in that distracted, heavy-browed way of men who carry too much responsibility, and he was single. This was the source of Florence's insomnia. She had watched the parade of women who circled him like sharks smelling blood in the water. They came with blinding smiles, contour-heavy makeup, and eyes that scanned the furniture for brand names before they even looked at his face. They didn't want Godwin, they wanted the access his surname provided.
I will not let them eat him alive,
Florence whispered to her reflection in the vanity mirror. She turned away from the lagoon view and walked toward the walk-in closet. However, she didn't reach for the imported lace or the damask wrappers she usually wore. Instead, she knelt and pulled a dusty, battered Ghana Must-Go bag from beneath the lowest shelf. Inside lay her armor for the war she was about to wage. The transformation was slow and deliberate. First, off came the diamond stud earrings and the gold wristwatch. Next, she scrubbed her face free of the expensive moisturizer that kept her skin supple, applying instead a layer of dry, chalky powder that accentuated every wrinkle, making her look not just old, but neglected. Then came the dress, a faded encre buba and wrapper that had seen better days 2 decades ago. It smelled faintly of mothballs and old sweat, a scent she had carefully curated. But the final piece was the most crucial. Florence took a bundle of rags, tightly wound and shaped into a distinct, swollen mound. With the precision of an engineer, she secured it against her lower abdomen using strips of cloth. When she tied the wrapper over it, the effect was jarring. She looked like a medical anomaly, a grotesque violation of nature. An 85-year-old woman heavily, impossibly pregnant. She stared at herself in the full-length mirror. The image was disturbing. It screamed of madness, of witchcraft, of a curse. In a city that feared the supernatural as much as poverty, this disguise was a repellent. No socialite looking for a rich husband would dare associate with such a creature. "Perfect," she croaked, practicing the trembling voice she would use. She bypassed the main elevator and took the service stairs down to the back entrance, slipping past the security guards who were busy watching a football match on their phones. The heavy steel gate clicked shut behind her. As she stepped onto the tarred road, the heat of the Lagos afternoon hit her like a physical blow, instantly sticking the cheap fabric to her skin. She began to shuffle, dragging one foot slightly, her posture hunched over the fake burden in her belly. Madame Florence was gone. The madwoman had arrived. The Civic Center on Ozumba Mbadu Avenue was pulsating with the heavy bass of an Afrobeat track, the glass walls vibrating slightly against the humidity of Victoria Island. It was the wedding of the year, the daughter of a senator marrying the son of a banking mogul. The parking lot was a showroom of Rolls-Royces and G-Wagons, gleaming under the afternoon sun. Inside, the air was frigid, scented with expensive oud perfumes and the mouth-watering aroma of party jollof rice. Madame Florence, now fully immersed in her role as the destitute eccentric, shuffled past the distracted security guards at the gate. She capitalized on a moment of confusion caused by a delivery van backing into a flower pot. By the time the guards turned around, she was already hobbling up the driveway, muttering nonsensically to the invisible child in her padded belly. She didn't aim for the main hall immediately. Instead, she lurked near the reception area where the Asoebi ladies, The bridesmaids and close friends clad in identical, exorbitantly expensive purple lace were taking endless selfies. These were exactly the type of women Godwin often brought home: beautiful, polished, and terrifyingly superficial. Florence spotted a cluster of 3 women near a large floral arrangement. She recognized one of them from a tabloid magazine, a model named Tokay who had been liking all of Godwin's Instagram posts recently. Florence seized her moment. She let out a low, guttural moan and stumbled forward, her hand clutching the grotesque bulge beneath her wrapper. "Help me," she rasped, her voice cracking perfectly. "My water, the baby is coming." The reaction was instantaneous and electric. The music didn't stop, but the chatter in the immediate vicinity died instantly. Tokay and her friends spun around, their smiles vanishing as they took in the sight of the 85-year-old woman with the pregnant belly. There was no pity in their eyes, only a primal mixture of horror and superstitious revulsion. In this part of the world, such a sight wasn't just a medical impossibility, it was a spiritual omen, a sign of deep, ancestral witchcraft. "Jesus is Lord!" Tokay shrieked, jumping back so fast her high heel twisted on the polished tiles. She held up her designer clutch like a shield. "God forbid! What kind of evil thing is this?" "Please," Florence begged, reaching out a withered, dusty hand toward Tokay's pristine manicured arm. "Just a chair. Just water." "Don't touch me," the model screamed, her face contorted in genuine panic. "Security! Where are the bouncers? There is a madwoman here. She wants to put bad luck on me." Her friends chimed in, creating a wall of rejection. "Tufiakwa! Look at her stomach. That is not a baby, that is a snake. Get her out before she infects the bride." A burly bouncer in a black suit materialized, grabbing Florence roughly by the shoulder. His grip was tight, lacking any gentleness for her age. "Mumthu, let's go. You can't be here. You are disturbing the peace." As she was frog-marched toward the exit, Florence didn't resist. She let her body go limp, playing the part of the confused senile woman, but her mind was razor-sharp. She looked back at Tokay, who was now frantically spraying holy water from a small bottle she pulled from her purse, wiping the air where Florence had stood. Godwin had called Tokay sweet and misunderstood. Florence now knew better. The girl had no kindness in her, only fear and vanity. One name was permanently crossed off the list. 2 days later, Florence traded the sterile, conditioned air of Victoria Island for the suffocating, diesel-fumed chaos of Lagos Island. Balogun Market was not a place for the faint-hearted. It was a living, breathing organism composed of millions of bodies, shouting voices, and the incessant honking of yellow Danfo buses. The heat rising from the asphalt on Broad Street was visible, shimmering in wavy lines that distorted the towering heaps of imported textiles and cheap electronics. Florence navigated the labyrinth of narrow alleys with a determination that belied her frail appearance. Her disguise was grimy today. She had rubbed charcoal on her elbows and cheeks to simulate days of sleeping rough. The padded belly protruded offensively against her thin frame, drawing stares that ranged from bemused to openly hostile. Here, there was no pretense of polite society. If the island socialites had feared her as a witch, the market women and street hustlers saw her as a spectacle, a freak show to break the monotony of the afternoon trade. "Mama, you swallow watermelon?" a wheelbarrow pusher shouted as he narrowly missed her toes with a load of frozen turkey. "Old woman, go hospital before you born spirit for here," another trader yelled, sparking raucous laughter from a row of women selling lace. Florence ignored them, her eyes scanning the crowd. She wasn't here for random abuse. She was tracking a specific quarry. Godwin had recently praised his new head of marketing, a young woman named Kemi. He described her as grounded, humble, and from a good Christian home. Godwin had mentioned Kemi often shopped for fabric on the island during her lunch breaks to save money. Florence spotted her near a stall selling Swiss voile. Kemi looked different out of her power suit. She was wearing huge sunglasses and bargaining aggressively with a sweating Igbo trader, her voice shrill and commanding, a far cry from the soft-spoken demeanor she presented in the boardroom. Florence made her move. She shuffled directly into Kemi's path, feigning a dizzy spell. She allowed her knees to buckle, grabbing onto the edge of the fabric stall for support, breathing heavily as if the baby were crushing her lungs. "My daughter," Florence wheezed, looking up at Kemi through the dusty fringe of her wig. "Please, the sun is too much. Do you have small water? Just a sip." Kemi recoiled as if she had stepped in sewage. She didn't just step back, she shoved Florence's hand away from the expensive fabric. "Madam, take your hand off the goods." Kemi snapped, her face twisting in disgust. She lowered her sunglasses to glare at the old woman. "What kind of nonsense is this? You are old enough to be my grandmother, yet you are walking around with a belly like that? Are you not ashamed?" "I am tired," Florence whispered, playing the part of the confused, senile expectant mother. "My son, he is coming for me." "Your son is irresponsible and you are delusional," Kemi retorted, turning back to the trader. "Oga, drive this woman away before she brings bad luck to your sales. Who knows what kind of taboo she is carrying? It's disgusting." The trader, eager to please a paying customer, waved a yardstick at Florence. "Mama, come it for here. Go beggar corner." Kemi didn't look back. She pulled out a pristine iPhone 15, typing a message, likely to Godwin, completely unbothered by the suffering she had just dismissed. Florence steadied herself, the shame of the moment sliding off her iron will. Godwin's assessment of Kemi's humility was laughably wrong. The girl was arrogant and cruel to those she deemed beneath her. Another name struck from the ledger. Florence turned, clutching her fake burden, and disappeared into the crush of bodies, ready for the next test. The setting for Florence's next test was a stark departure from the chaotic markets and glittering parties. It was the sprawling concrete expanse of a megachurch parking lot along the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. The Night of Breakthroughs service had just concluded, releasing a river of weary but spiritually charged congregants into the humid night air. Floodlights buzzed overhead, casting long, harsh shadows against the rows of dusty SUVs and chartered buses. Florence had positioned herself strategically near the VIP exit, a designated zone for the church's heavy tithe payers. She sat on a low concrete curb, her back aching against the rough surface, the artificial pregnancy weighing heavily on her hips. Her target tonight was Chidinma, a woman Godwin described with reverence as a prayer warrior and a Proverbs 31 woman. Godwin, seeking spiritual grounding, believed Chidinma's intense devotion was the anchor he needed. He often spoke of her compassion and her ability to quote scripture for every situation. When Chidinma appeared, she looked every bit the sanctified woman Godwin adored. She wore a modest but impeccably tailored skirt suit, a large Bible clutched to her chest, and her head wrapped in a severe, dignified scarf. She was walking briskly toward a silver Toyota Camry, humming a worship song, her face tilted upward as if still in communion with the divine. Florence let out a sharp, pained whimper, loud enough to cut through the hymn. "Daughter of Zion, help me." Chidinma halted mid-step. She lowered her gaze from the heavens to the dirty, huddled figure on the curb. She didn't scream or recoil in terror like the others. Instead, her expression hardened into a mask of cold, pious judgment. She adjusted her glasses, peering down at Florence's swollen abdomen with the clinical detachment of a judge examining evidence. "Mama," Chidinma said, her voice crisp and devoid of warmth. "What are you doing here at this hour? The service is for those seeking God, not for loitering." "I am hungry," Florence rasped, extending a trembling hand. "And the baby is heavy. I have no money for transport back to the mainland. Please, just a lift to the bus stop. Or small change for bread." Chidinma took a step back, not out of fear, but to avoid soiling her shoes. She shook her head slowly, a gesture of profound disappointment. You are pregnant? At your age? This is an abomination. The Bible says our bodies are temples, yet you have defiled yours with such unnatural things. Who is the father? Is this the fruit of promiscuity in your twilight years? Florence was momentarily stunned by the specific cruelty of the attack. I made a mistake, she lied, keeping her head down. I just need mercy. Mercy follows repentance, Chidinma lectured, unlocking her car with a chirp of the remote. I cannot give you money to support a lifestyle of sin. If I give you money now, you will think God approves of this grotesquerie. You need deliverance, not handouts. Go to the counseling unit tomorrow. They will cast out the spirit of lust that has seized you. With that, the Proverbs 31 woman got into her air-conditioned sanctuary, slammed the door, and locked it audibly. As she reversed the car, the headlights swept over Florence, blinding her for a moment. Florence watched the taillights fade into the traffic of the expressway. Godwin's spiritual anchor was nothing more than a Pharisee, wrapping her lack of empathy in religious rhetoric. The ledger was filling up with failures. Florence pushed herself up from the curb, dusting the grit from her wrapper. The night was far from over. The invitation on Godwin's desk had been heavy, cream-colored cardstock embossed with gold leaf, the Sapphire Gala for Maternal Health, hosted by Amara Nwosu. Godwin spoke of Amara with a reverence reserved for saints. She was a tireless advocate, he claimed, a woman who had dedicated her life to the upliftment of the downtrodden. Tonight, she was raising millions of naira to build a maternity clinic in the slums. It was the perfect stage for Florence's most biting test yet. Florence bypassed the red carpet, where photographers were blinding celebrities with flashbulbs. Instead, she utilized the confusion of a catering truck arrival to slip into the service corridor of the Eco Hotel. She navigated the back hallways, dodging waiters carrying trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres, until she found a side door that opened directly into the grand ballroom. The room was a sea of glittering sequins and crisp tuxedos. Huge screens behind the stage projected black and white photos of impoverished women holding babies, artfully composed, dignified shots that made poverty look almost poetic. At the center of it all stood Amara, radiant in a sapphire blue gown, clutching a microphone. She was midway through a tearful anecdote about a woman named Mama Rose, who had no one to help her birth her child. We must be their voice, Amara declared, her voice trembling with practiced emotion. We must be the hands that catch them when they fall. Florence chose that precise moment to lurch out from behind the velvet curtains. She didn't look like the dignified black and white photos. She looked messy, inconvenient, and viscerally real. Her wrapper was stained with mud, her hair was a bird's nest of gray, and the unnatural, swollen belly led the way as she stumbled toward the VIP tables. Help me, Florence cried out, her voice raw and grating against the polished acoustics of the room. My baby is heavy. I have nowhere to go. A ripple of unease tore through the room. The applause for Amara died instantly. Guests lowered their crystal flutes, whispering behind their hands. This wasn't part of the program. This was the smell of the streets invading their air-conditioned fantasy. Amara froze. For a split second, Florence saw a flash of annoyance twitch beneath the mask of benevolence. The younger woman descended the stage stairs, not running to help, but marching to intercept. She signaled to the security detail with a subtle, sharp flick of her wrist, but she reached Florence first. Madam, Amara hissed, her voice low enough that the microphone didn't pick it up, but loud enough for Florence to hear the venom. What are you doing? You are ruining the presentation. I thought you help women like me, Florence wheezed, grabbing the edge of a table covered in white linen. You are building a clinic? I need a clinic now. This is a fundraiser, not a shelter, Amara snapped, her smile fixed violently in place for the watching donors. She gripped Florence's elbow, her nails digging into the loose skin. We are raising money to help people there, in the villages. You cannot just waltz in here looking like this. You are making the guests uncomfortable. How can they donate if they are disgusted? I am the mission, Florence countered, staring deep into Amara's eyes. I am standing right in front of you. You are a security breach, Amara corrected coldly. 2 large men in black suits arrived, flanking Florence. Amara turned to the room, her voice pitching up into a sweet, apologetic register. Ladies and gentlemen, please forgive the interruption. It seems we have a confused soul who wandered in from the streets. We will ensure she gets appropriate assistance outside. She nodded to the guards. Get her out the back. And wipe down this table. She touched the cutlery. As the guards hauled Florence away, the applause resumed, louder than before, celebrating Amara's grace under pressure. Godwin's saint was nothing more than a careerist using the poor as props for her own glorification. She loved humanity in the abstract, but despised the human in front of her. Florence let the guards drag her out into the humidity of the night, feeling a grim satisfaction. The list was nearly empty. The scent of the Summit Medical Center in Ikoyi was not of illness or antiseptic, but of lavender and money. It was a fortress of wellness reserved for the city's ultra-wealthy, a place where appointments were made weeks in advance and the waiting room resembled the lobby of a 5-star hotel. Godwin had been seeing Dr. Folklore for a few months. He described her as a brilliant mind, a woman who combined the sharp intellect of a surgeon with the nurturing soul of a healer. He often bragged about her pedigree, Cambridge-educated, board-certified in London, and now running the most exclusive practice in Lagos. Florence entered through the sliding glass doors, shivering exaggeratedly as the blast of industrial air conditioning hit her sweat-dampened skin. She had upped the stakes for this encounter. She wasn't just begging for water, she was mimicking the final, frantic stages of labor. She groaned loudly, clutching her belly with both hands, doubling over near a display of imported organic vitamins. "Help me! The baby is coming!" she wailed, her voice echoing uncomfortably in the hushed, carpeted space. The receptionist, a young man in a crisp waistcoat, dropped his phone in shock. But before he could react, the double doors to the inner sanctum swung open. Dr. Folklore emerged, reviewing a file on an iPad. She was striking, wearing a tailored white coat over a designer's silk blouse, her stethoscope hanging like a piece of jewelry around her neck. Florence collapsed onto the plush waiting room sofa, dirtying the pristine beige fabric with the grime she had rubbed on her wrapper. "Doctor, please. It hurts." Folklore stopped dead. She didn't rush forward to check a pulse. She didn't call for a gurney. Instead, she looked around the waiting room, checking to see if any of her VIP clients, politicians' wives or oil tycoons, were witnessing this intrusion. Her face didn't register concern. It registered annoyance, as if a rat had scurried across the floor. "Who let this woman in?" Folklare's voice was icy, cutting through Florence's moans. She signaled to the security guard standing by the door. "Get her out. Now." "But, madam," the guard hesitated, looking at Florence's heaving stomach. "She looks like she is in labor. What if she delivers here?" "Don't be stupid," Folklore snapped, walking closer but maintaining a safe, sterile distance. She peered at Florence with a look of clinical disdain. "Look at her. She is 80 if she is a day. That is not a pregnancy, it is either a tumor, ascites, or she is mentally unstable and stuffed a pillow up there. Either way, this is a boutique clinic for subscribers, not a general hospital for charity cases. We are not insured for this kind of liability." Florence reached out, her hand trembling. "I have money, somewhere. Please, doctor. Just check me." Folklore recoiled, pulling her white coat tight against her body to avoid contact. "I am not touching you. You are a biohazard risk to my patients. If you have a medical emergency, go to the general hospital on the mainland. They deal with the masses." She turned back to the receptionist. "Call the police if she isn't gone in 2 minutes. And call the cleaners. She has ruined the upholstery." Florence watched the healer turn her back. Godwin's nurturing soul, was a technician of the elite, completely devoid of the Hippocratic oath when it applied to the poor. She treated medicine not as a calling, but as a club membership. As the guard firmly escorted Florence out into the blinding sunlight, she felt a profound sadness for her son. He was surrounded by women who loved his status, his image, his religion, and his health, but not a single one capable of loving a human being. The list was blank. She had no one left to test. The Lagos sky did not darken gradually. It bruised, turning a violent shade of purple before ripping open. The rain that followed was not a drizzle but a bombardment, a sudden, deafening deluge that turned the Oberland bus stop into a chaotic scramble for shelter. Commuters used briefcases as umbrellas, jumping over rapidly forming puddles of black sludge. The noise was overwhelming, the drumming of water on corrugated zinc, the screech of tires losing traction, and the shouting of conductors trying to herd passengers into damp yellow buses. Florence was caught in the open. The weight of the water soaked her disguise instantly, making the padded belly sag dangerously and the cheap ankara cling to her shivering frame. She was truly 85, and for the first time since starting the charade, the exhaustion was not an act. Her bones ached with a deep, piercing chill. She shuffled toward the dry patch of concrete beneath the pedestrian bridge, a coveted spot already packed with shivering bodies. "Move back. No space," a young man in a mechanic's jumpsuit shouted, elbowing her aside. He looked at her wet, protruding stomach with a sneer. "Mama, go find roof for another place. This side full." She was jostled, her foot slipping on a discarded plastic bottle. She braced herself for the fall, for the harsh impact against the unforgiving concrete, but it never came. A hand, rough with calluses but gentle in its grip, caught her arm. "Olga, take time now. She is an old woman." The voice was young, melodic, but threaded with steel. Florence looked up, wiping rain from her eyes. Standing there was a young woman, perhaps 25, manning a small, makeshift stall consisting of a large frying pan balanced on a gas cylinder and a cooler of pap. She was drenched, her braided hair plastered to her skull, but she had abandoned her post to catch Florence. This was Neka. "Come inside, Mama," Neka urged, guiding Florence toward the small radius of warmth generated by her gas burner. She kicked a plastic crate forward, dusting it off with the hem of her apron. "Sit down here. It is near the fire." Florence collapsed onto the crate, her teeth chattering. She expected the questions to start immediately, the interrogation about the pregnancy, the judgment, the mockery. But Neka simply turned back to her frying pan, flipping the balls of bean cake, akra, with a long metal spoon. The smell of frying onions and peppers was intoxicating, cutting through the stench of petrol and wet earth. "You are shaking," Neka observed quietly. She reached into a plastic bag and pulled out a faded, oversized cardigan. It was clearly her own defense against the cold. "Wear this. It is not fine, but it is dry." Florence hesitated, staring at the garment. "But you will be cold." "I am young, blood is hot." Neka smiled, a genuine expression that crinkled the corners of her eyes. "You are carrying 2 lives. You need it more." She draped the cardigan over Florence's shoulders. The warmth was instant, but the shock was greater. "You are carrying 2 lives." No sneer. No disgust. Neka accepted the impossibility of the pregnancy as a fact of Florence's reality, treating the madwoman with the dignity due a mother. "I have no money," Florence croaked, sticking to her script, though her throat felt tight with genuine emotion. "I cannot pay for food." Neka didn't pause. She scooped 3 hot, golden-brown akra balls into a piece of old newspaper, adding a generous dollop of spicy pepper sauce. She handed the steaming package to Florence. "Who asked you for money?" "It will drive the cold away." Florence took a bite. The heat seared her tongue, grounding her. She watched Neka work. The girl was beautiful, not in the polished, manufactured way of the island socialites, but in a raw, enduring way. Her hands were scarred from hot oil burns, her sandals were worn thin, yet she moved with a grace that suggested an inner nobility. "Why?" Florence asked, watching the girl shush away a stray dog. "Everyone else laughs. They say I am a witch." Nneka paused, wiping sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand. She looked at Florence, her dark eyes filled with a profound, weary wisdom. "My own mother died when I was small. I don't know what she looked like, but I know she was a woman. Every old woman I see, maybe that is how she would have been. If I laugh at you, I am laughing at her memory. And besides," she shrugged, turning back to her customers, "we are all just struggling to survive this Lagos. Why make it harder for each other?" Florence sat in the sanctuary of the bridge, eating the charity of a street vendor while Billionaire's daughters had refused her water. The rain continued to lash down, but Florence finally felt the warmth of the sun. She had found her. The following afternoon, the midday sun had baked the mud at the Oberland bus stop into a cracked, dusty crust. Godwin sat in the back of his armored Mercedes Maybach, his knuckles white as he gripped his phone. The GPS tracker he had secretly installed in his mother's handbag was pinging from a location that made no sense, under the chaotic tangle of the concrete bridges connecting the mainland to the islands. "Driver, move faster," Godwin barked, unbuttoning his collar. "She has been gone for 6 hours." He was terrified. Not of kidnappers, who would kidnap a senile old woman in rags, but of the indignity. If the press found out Madame Florence, the matriarch of the family, was wandering the streets hallucinating a pregnancy, the company's stock would plummet. He pictured her dehydrated, mocked, or worse, dead in a gutter. The sleek black car looked like a spaceship landing on a primitive planet as it navigated the potholed service lane. Hawkers banged on the bulletproof glass, thrusting gala sausage rolls and sachets of water at the tinted windows. The driver, a burly ex-military man named Sunday, honked aggressively, parting the sea of yellow buses until they reached the underpass. "There, sir," Sunday pointed. Godwin looked out. His heart hammered against his ribs. There she was. His mother, the woman who had taught him how to read balance sheets before he could ride a bike, was sitting on an overturned crate next to a smoky frying pan. She looked small, frail, and utterly ridiculous with that grotesque lump under her dress. But she wasn't alone. A young woman in a grease-stained apron was crouching beside her, carefully feeding her spoonfuls of pap from a plastic bowl. The girl was wiping Florence's mouth with a tenderness that Godwin hadn't experienced since he was a child. Godwin didn't wait for Sunday to open the door. He shoved it open, stepping out into the heat and noise. His Italian leather loafers sank immediately into a patch of black sludge, but he didn't care. He marched toward the stall, his presence sucking the air out of the immediate vicinity. "Mama!" Godwin shouted, his voice a mix of relief and anger. "What are you doing here? Do you want to kill me with worry?" Florence looked up, her eyes sharp behind the mask of senility. She saw the shock on his face, but more importantly, she watched Nneka. Nneka didn't cower before the rich man in the suit. Instead, she stood up, placing her body between Godwin and the old woman. She held the serving spoon like a weapon, her chin tilted up defiantly. "Oga, lower your voice," Nneka commanded, her tone cutting through the noise of the traffic. "Can you not see she is tired? You don't just come here shouting like a masquerade. Is this how you treat your mother?" Godwin blinked, stunned. He was used to people bowing, scraping, and trembling in his presence. He was the CEO. He was the Oga at the top. No one spoke to him like this, certainly not a street vendor selling bean cakes. "Do you know who I am?" Godwin asked, more out of confusion than arrogance. "I don't care if you are the governor," Nneka retorted, her eyes flashing fire. "If she is your mother, why is she on the street? Why is she hungry? Look at her condition." She gestured vaguely to the fake pregnancy. "She needs care, not noise. You should be ashamed." Godwin opened his mouth to retort, to explain that his mother was suffering from dementia, that he gave her everything, but the words died in his throat. He looked at Neka properly for the first time. Beneath the sweat and the soot, he saw a fierce, protective beauty that was entirely devoid of pretense. She wasn't trying to impress him, she was judging him. And for the first time in years, Godwin felt small. Florence, observing from her crate, hid a smile behind her dusty hand. This was it. The chemistry of conflict. I am sorry, Godwin stammered, the apology feeling foreign on his tongue. He softened his posture. She wanders off. It is a sickness. I came to take her home. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a thick wad of mint-fresh Naira notes, enough to buy Neka's entire stall 10 times over. For your trouble. For feeding her. Neka looked at the money, then at Godwin's face. She didn't take it. I didn't feed her because I wanted your money, Oga. I fed her because she is a human being. She turned back to the frying pan, dismissing him. Just take her home gently. And buy her better slippers. These ones are cutting her feet. Godwin stood there, the cash hanging uselessly in his hand, feeling like a fool. He had tried to buy gratitude and had been served a lesson in dignity instead. He looked at his mother, who was now slowly standing up, leaning on Neka for support one last time. Let's go, Mama, Godwin said quietly, stepping forward to take her arm, careful not to dirty his suit against Neka's apron, not out of disgust this time, but out of a strange, newfound respect. As he guided Florence toward the waiting Maybach, he couldn't help but look back. Neka was already back to work, flipping Accra, her head high, glowing like a diamond in the dust. The following morning, the atmosphere at the Oberland underpass was tense. Neka worked with one eye on her frying pan and the other on the road, her nerves frayed. In Lagos, when a rich man takes notice of a nobody, the consequences are rarely benevolent. It usually ends in displacement, arrest, or bulldozers. She half expected the dreaded KAI, kick against indiscipline, officials to swoop down and seize her meager livelihood because she had dared to speak back to a big man. Around noon, the black Mercedes Maybach returned. It didn't creep up stealthily, it glided in like a shark, scattering the crowd of pedestrians. The tinted window rolled down, but it wasn't the arrogant sun this time. It was Sunday, the driver, looking uncomfortable in his uniform. Sister, Sunday called out, his voice respectful but firm. Madam wants to see you. Neka wiped her hands on her apron, her heart hammering against her ribs. Which madam? The old woman? Is she okay? Just come, Sunday said, opening the back door. She said I must bring you. Do not fear. Neka hesitated. Leaving her stall meant losing a day's profit, perhaps losing her spot entirely to a rival vendor. But the memory of the frail woman shivering under the bridge tugged at her conscience. She turned off her gas cylinder, asked a neighboring fruit seller to watch her cooler, and stepped into the air-conditioned belly of the beast. The drive was a silent teleportation from one world to another. They crossed the Falomo Bridge, leaving the noise and grime behind, winding through the manicured, tree-lined streets of Ikoyi, past gates manned by armed guards, until they reached the ultra-exclusive enclave of Banana Island. The car stopped in front of a skyscraper that seemed to pierce the clouds. Neka was escorted through a lobby that shone with marble and gold, up a private elevator that moved so smoothly she didn't feel the ascent. When the doors opened, she stepped into a penthouse that was larger than her entire village compound. The view through the floor-to-ceiling windows was dizzying, a panoramic sweep of the Atlantic Ocean meeting the Lagos Lagoon. Welcome, my daughter. The voice was familiar, but the vessel was not. Sitting in a high-backed velvet armchair was not a hunched, pregnant beggar in rags. It was an empress. Madame Florence sat with a posture of steel, wearing a shimmering gold damask head tie, geli, and a matching blouse that cost more than Neka would earn in 10 lifetimes. Her skin was moisturized, her diamonds caught the light, and the pregnancy was gone. Neka stood frozen near the elevator, her cheap rubber sandals sinking into the Persian rug. She looked around, confused, searching for the madwoman. Then she looked into the Empress's eyes, sharp, intelligent, and crinkled with that same knowing smile she had seen under the bridge. "You," Neka whispered, the realization hitting her like a physical blow. "It was you? You are not pregnant? You are not mad? I am as sane as the central bank, and significantly richer," Florence said dryly, gesturing to the empty sofa opposite her. "Sit down, Neka. You look like you've seen a ghost." "I don't understand," Neka stammered, remaining standing, her defiance returning as the shock wore off. "But why did you come to the gutter to mock us? Was it a game? Reality TV?" "It was an interview," Florence corrected, her voice losing its playful edge and becoming serious. "For a position that cannot be applied for on LinkedIn." She pressed a button on the side table. "I have a son. Godwin. You met him, the loud one in the suit. He is a good man, but he is blind. He lives in a world of mirrors, surrounded by people who only show him what he wants to see. I needed someone who could see the truth. Someone who would offer water to a witch and shelter to a beggar, simply because it was right." The side door opened, and Godwin walked in. He stopped dead in his tracks. He looked from his mother, regally composed, to the street vendor standing in his living room in a grease-stained apron. The connection snapped into place. The madness, the wandering off, it had all been a play. And Neka was the only one who hadn't failed the audition. "Mother," Godwin breathed, "what have you done?" "I have found the only honest woman in Lagos," Florence declared, folding her hands. "Neka, I am not offering you money for the Accra. I am offering you a chance to change your destiny. But first, you must forgive an old woman for her tricks." Neka looked at the billionaire, then at the son who was looking at her with a mix of awe and embarrassment. She wasn't impressed by the wealth, she was assessing their character. "I don't want your destiny, Ma," Neka said softly, her chin high. "I just want to know if you are safe. Since you are, I will go back to my stall. My oil is getting cold." She turned to the elevator. It was the ultimate power move, completely unintentional. She was walking away from a kingdom because she hadn't been asked properly. Florence smiled. "Godwin," she commanded, "go and get her. And this time, don't offer her cash. Offer her a ride. And a conversation." Godwin caught the elevator doors just as they were sliding shut, jamming his expensive Oxford shoe into the gap. The rubber bumper bounced back, and the doors retracted, revealing Neka standing in the corner of the polished steel box, arms crossed, staring at the floor numbers. She didn't look impressed by his urgency. She looked like someone who had a business to run and was wasting time. "Wait," Godwin panted, straightening his tie, though the knot felt suddenly suffocating. He hit the stop button, suspending them between the 42nd and 41st floors. "Please, don't go back to the bridge. Not yet." "Oga, I have customers," Neka said, her voice flat. "Hunger does not wait for rich people drama. Your mother has had her fun. Let me go." "It's not drama," Godwin said, dropping his hands to his sides, stripping away the corporate veneer he had worn for decades. "It's an apology. A real one. I don't want to give you a ride because my mother told me to. I want to give you a ride because yesterday you were the only person in this entire city who made me feel ashamed of myself. And I think I need that. I need someone who tells me the truth." Neka studied him. The silence in the suspended elevator was heavy. She saw the man beneath the suit, lonely, overburdened, and desperate for something real in a city of fakes. "I don't drink champagne," she said finally, a small, testing smile playing on her lips. "And I don't eat small chops that look like plastic." "There is a mama put near the marina that serves goat meat pepper soup," Godwin countered, a grin breaking through his anxiety. "Spicy enough to blind you. My driver knows the place." "Sunday knows it?" She laughed, the sound warm and unpretentious. "If the soup is watery, I am leaving." 6 months later, the grand ballroom of the Eco Hotel was once again filled to capacity, But the atmosphere was radically different from the charity gala where Florence had been dragged out. This was the wedding of the decade, yet the guest list was a paradox. It included the governors, the oil tycoons, and the celebrities, but the front rows, the seats of honor, were occupied by market women from Oberland, wheelbarrow pushers, and street hawkers, all dressed in pristine, identical ankara asoebi provided by the groom. Madame Florence sat on a gilded throne at the high table, no longer the mad pregnant woman, but the undisputed queen of the event. She watched the dance floor with a hawk's satisfaction. Godwin and Nneka were in the center. Nneka wore a gown of crushed silk that shimmered like moonlight, but she moved with the same grounded energy she had under the bridge. She wasn't playing a role, she had simply expanded her sphere of influence. She laughed as Godwin tried, clumsily, to match her steps to the talking drums. From the periphery, the failed candidates watched in stunned silence. Toke, the model, stood near the bar, her glass trembling. Chidinma, the prayer warrior, looked on with pursed lips, unable to reconcile that the street vendor she had judged was now the most powerful woman in their social circle. Amara, the charity hostess, forced a smile for the cameras, but her eyes were cold with envy. They had all met the billionaire matriarch, and they had all dismissed her as trash. Florence tapped her microphone, silencing the band. The room went quiet. She stood up, frail but formidable, holding a glass of water, a simple, symbolic toast. "Many of you are wondering," Florence began, her voice amplified and crystal clear, "how my son found such a gem. You look at her beauty, her grace, and you think he was lucky. But luck had nothing to do with it." She scanned the room, her gaze lingering briefly on the women who had rejected her. "I walked among you as a beggar," Florence continued, the revelation hitting the room like a shockwave. Gasps erupted from the tables where Toke and Amara stood. "I came to you hungry, thirsty, and heavy with a burden. I looked for humanity in your churches, your galas, and your clinics. I found only ice." She turned to Nneka, her eyes softening. "But under a bridge, in the rain, with nothing to gain and everything to lose, one woman gave me her sweater. She gave me her food. She gave me her dignity." Florence raised her glass higher. "Lagos is a city of gold, but gold is cold and hard. Today we celebrate something rarer. We celebrate a heart of flesh. To my daughter, Nneka, the new matriarch. The kingdom is yours." As the room erupted in applause, some genuine, some terrified, Nneka didn't look at the cheering crowd. She looked at Godwin, and then at Florence, and winked. She had passed the test, but more importantly, she had taught them all a lesson they would never forget. You never know who is hiding beneath the rags.
Thank you for watching today's video, guys. Now I would love you to kindly hit the subscribe button, subscribe to our channel, and also like today's video and share this video.